My mission president was fine. His wife was awful. And where Monica, you had the companion who would introduce you as, oh, she's from Temple Square. One time in a zone conference, they would always pick on me and pull me to like give the talk or to practice how to give the discussion or any of it. Was always me. And I didn't care. Getting up in front of people, not an issue, but it was the criticism that I would get afterwards that was so a personal attack.
Wow.
And it was blatantly obvious. And they had this new thing that they wanted us to do when you taught the first discussion, that as you say, well, will you pray to know if Joseph Smith is a prophet of God? And as we said, will you pray, we would get on our knees.
What?
Essentially coercing.
Talk about coercion.
Yes.
My goodness. Like, how about grab their head and shoulders and pull them down as you go down?
Exactly.
Oh my gosh.
So I am like dying that they're having us do this. And my companion, bless her heart, she knew that it would be my, you know how you swap? She knew it'd be my to do it. And I wouldn't do it. I didn't do it.
Welcome to the Faith Transition Podcast. In this episode, I have a fun and heartfelt conversation with 3 former Temple Square sisters who recently left the LDS Church within the past couple of years. In this episode, they share with us their faith transition stories. They share with us some of the experiences they had serving on Temple Square and throughout their missions. And they also share with us what belief system they stand on today after leaving the church. I really hope that you enjoy these conversations as much as I did having them with Lesa Sears, Kelly Price Nance, and Monica Valentino O'Brien.
Lesa, Kelly, and Monica will share, what made them transition away from the church. And we will also talk about the things that have helped us as we were transitioning and leaving and much more. So Lesa's going to be first to do her little intro.
Okay. Well, I think I was just a normal Mormon girl going along with the Mormon girl thing, right? So I was born in the covenant. So both my parents are actually converts, but I grew up in the church. I went to seminary. I went to all the church activities. I got my medallion, right? So everything that you're supposed to do as a Mormon girl, I did. And then my friends were all getting married. So they're like, I'm from small town. They're 18, 19, getting married. I'm like, I want to get married. And I never did. So I just figured that was God's little sign to me that I needed to go on a mission. So
where did you grow up? Like, where are you from?
I grew up in the Rogue Valley, so a little town called White City, Oregon. So the closest town is Medford, Oregon, so southern Oregon, about 30 minutes from California border.
All right.
So I grew up there my whole life and went to, I lived in the same house my whole life, never moved around or anything. So my parents were, if you ask them, they were very active. But my mom also had lupus, so we missed out on a lot. So she couldn't go to church a lot. So there was that, but I was super active. My brothers would come in activity and leave activity. But overall, we were very active and tried to do what we were supposed to do and live the way the Mormons teach you to live. And everything was great. And I didn't get married. My friends all got married. I was the old maid. I decided to go on a mission. So I had studied and become in the travel industry. So I was already in the travel industry. And so when they fill out your mission papers, it's like, what do you do? And what are your hobbies? And I was like, they're totally going to send me to Temple Square. And they're like, no, they're not. I'm like, yeah. So when I opened my papers and it was Temple Square, they were like, you're kidding. Because I already said I was going there. So I was like, oh man, but it was the best experience. I loved everything about my mission. I just loved it all. I had 4 older brothers, so I just thought it was awesome that all of a sudden now I have all these sisters. That was so cool. I got off my mission, went and moved down to California, met my husband in the singles ward. I mean, I'm totally, and we decided he should go to school. Then he went to medical school. So we've lived all over, joined the military. So I'm a military wife. And now we're in Fairbanks, Alaska. And each time I would move to a new area, I would be called to be the Relief Society president. So I had been the Relief Society president for 10 years.
Oh, wow.
So I don't know what it was about me, but I must just look like Relief Society president material. And I loved it. I mean, I loved Relief Society. I loved the sisterhood. I loved getting up there and sharing experiences. I thought the church was the true church, the one and only church, until I started seeing some things that I could not handle. So it started out with I'm a feminist. I'm a liberal. I'm in the military. I'm a Mormon. I mean, it was very contradictory, right? Like, I didn't make sense. But then I would see things like, I'm struggling with this. I was struggling with the Kavanaugh hearing. Was really hard for me when the Mormon men were up there, talking about it. And I was like, what is going on? This can't be right. So then I can't remember, they had like this face-to-face in Nauvoo, and they were introducing the new Saints book, right? Who was that did that? And he said, if you study this book, your testimony will be strengthened, right? So I thought, okay, my testimony must be faltering because I'm struggling. So I'm going to study it. And that was it. I studied it, and it just led me down the rabbit hole, and it was totally opposite of what I'd been taught. Totally opposite of what.
Which book was this?
People on Temple Square.
Which book was this?
It's the Saints book about the history of the church that the church released. It's a newer one, and now they just released volume 2. So it's called.
What year was this that they?
Just recently, like a year and a half ago, right, Kelly?
September 2018.
Wow, so that's very recent. I don't even know about that book. Like, I don't know anything about that book. I've been out too long. Wow.
Yeah, so that was happening, and then at the same time I was dealing with some gossiping women in the ward, and they were gossiping about my daughter, and I was trying to make things good and correct, and it kept happening. And finally I went to the stake president, and he basically told me that was a girl problem and a woman problem, and he wasn't going to deal with it, and which offended me and offended my husband, and then we realized there's no discernment, right? That was our thing. Like, there is no discernment. This man cannot be called of God, because how could they let this happen, right? And then that whole thing. So my shelf and my whole foundation crumbled in like a month. Like,
oh wow.
I was the Relief Society president. My husband was on the Stake High Council.
Oh wow.
And we left, and we never went back. So yeah, it was fast. It was very fast.
And this happened in 2018?
Yep.
So
yeah.
that's
and so then I reached out to all my friends who I knew, and I posted stuff on Facebook like, do you guys know this? Like, what is the Sears stone? Or did you know that Joseph Smith had married all these women and one of them was 14 years old? did you know this, right? And I'm like, did you read this essay? Like all this stuff. And then Kelly reaches out to me, and I'm contacting all these people. And so that's how I started my little group on Facebook, where there's like 20 of us ex-Temple Square missionaries, and
Wow.
a bunch of other women that I've met along the way that have, we're just kind of a support group for each other, and it's really nice.
That is.
You feel like you're found, like, I don't know, like everything you knew is a lie, right? And like, how can this be happening to me?
Yeah.
Like, how could I have been this smart, educated woman and been duped for, 40 years? Like, how did that happen to me?
Right. No, it's exactly that. And we'll come back to this. We'll come back to this, but this is a good place to stop for now, and then we'll go to Kelly, and she can tell us her story. Go for it, and then we'll come back to you, Lesa.
All right. So I was born and raised in the church. I was a BIC baby. My dad's side of the family is Mormon pioneer heritage stock. Mariner Wood Merrill is my 5th great grandfather. So that he's like all the Merrills are all Mormon. It's part of that lineage. And then let's see, I grew up all over in the West. In California, we lived in Murray, Utah, which was fun because the same Fred Meyers that we would go grocery shopping with, I was a little girl. I remember when it was built. And then I went to high school in Arizona, got my mission call to Temple Square. I was a little rebel. I hear this. Just me. Now I hear it. I did not seminary. I did earn my medallion, and I went to BYU, Idaho, was Rick's college at the time, and went ahead and was really proud that I went a year and a half and did not get married. I was really proud about that. But I did get a very serious boyfriend in that transition, and I got the token promise ring. He went on a mission, and while he was in the MTC, he came home. He had a repentance issue. That was super fun. It wasn't me. But of course, everybody thought it was me, and it was a hot mess. And this was right when they said, if you leave the MTC or your mission, you have to stay home a year. And so he came home, and then they did the whole year announcement thing. So I was like, oh my gosh. And of course, being the devout girlfriend and medallion wearing daughter of God, I looked at this as an opportunity that now I would be able to serve the Lord. And I was like, I'm gonna go on a mission. And so he went on his mission, and I waited. It was about 9 months. And I turned my mission papers in 90 days before I turned 21, because that was as soon as you could turn them in. And I was the first one in my state to submit my mission papers over this new thing called a modem. Nobody had ever used a modem before. And so I got to turn my mission papers in on a Sunday. It was huge. And so I turned my mission papers in, and I got my mission call, and I left 7 days after my 21st birthday. I went to the MTC. So I was like the youngest on the square forever. I was super proud about that. I was super angry like everybody else. I lived in Salt Lake. My brother had been born in Salt Lake. I was furious to go to Temple Square. I wanted to wear Doc Martens and carry a machete and go to the Amazon and convert the Lamanites. I mean, right? So being called to Temple Square was, and this sounds so Mormon-y of me, but it was exactly where I was supposed to be. Like, I'm a performer. I married my guitar player. So since I was 6 years old, I've been in front of an audience. I've been singing, doing something, acting, whatever, for quite some time. So being on Temple Square, I remember somebody freaking out because they had, 55 people on the Tabernacle tour before the Motab sang on Thursday night. And I was like, yeah, that is where it's at. 55, yes. So it was super great.
You were like, give it to me. I want the people.
Yes. It wasn't hard. I had somebody dare me one time to sing the acoustical demonstration in the Tabernacle. It wasn't hard to twist my arm. So yeah, it's fun. I loved the square. I loved the sisters. There's lots of drama, I'm not gonna lie. And I would honestly say that the square is where my shelf started. It was the first time that I ever had any conflicting information provided to me. And I really struggled with my mission president. Both my mission president on the field and on the square. It wasn't pretty. And so I had that, got home, was an old maid. My parents had moved to another state. It was a hot mess. I moved back to Arizona, and ended up meeting this boy who was a convert to the church, had long hair and played in a band, but was a return missionary and graduated from college. And I was like, well, that's interesting. And so I Yoko Ono'd his band, and we got married. And it's been, he's the love of my life. So it was perfect. He's an anthropology major. And so he was at Arizona State studying Lucy and Mesoamerica and all of these things. And so at the very beginning of our relationship, he was very honest and said that he kind of had to departmentalize science and faith and all of that. And I'm pretty open-minded, and I totally got that, and I appreciated his honesty. And so we just kind of we just went through bishopric, where Lesa was in Relief Society. I was the young women's queen. Like non-stop young women. I refer to her as my fake daughter because I was her Laurel advisor, or my maid, when she was 14. And she's still mine. She's now 24, return missionary. She too has left the church, so is in transition. And so I've always been in charge of girls' camp. And my transition out really probably happened once I was released. I was the stake young women's president of our stake. I was released, and I had to sit in Relief Society and sit in a lesson and listen to this woman say, well, the prophet said. And I remember writing it down in my book. No, we didn't. And I wrote it down because I was like, I'm going to go find, she's wrong. She's a liar. No way. And then she quoted this scripture and what that means. And I was like, no, she's crazy. I don't like her anyway. She's nuts. And sure enough, when I went back and studied, it really did say that. And she was right.
Say that again. She said, the prophet said what?
I don't remember exactly what it was. She just quoted this. It was straight out of the Relief Society manual. And I don't remember, I'd have to go look it up, but I remember just being like sick, like just.
Do you remember what it was about? Like,
it was something, I honestly, this will tell you a lot about me. I think it was about the proclamation to the family and marriage and family relationships. I believe it was about that. It was, Lesa and I left about the same time. We walked away September 2018.
That's very recent.
Yeah, absolutely. And so when she said that the prophet was right, that parents should not be able to let their children be baptized if they were in a same-sex marriage. That's
wow.
It's about. And that just,
so okay, wait a second, because I've been gone by that time. I've been gone for 3 years or so. So I'm not sitting in Relief Society. So that was actually preached in the church, like in Relief Society. Now, this is crazy because they reversed that, right? So how do you justify that? How do you justify standing up, teaching stuff that the prophet said, and then, oh, no, just kidding. When you've like hurt so many people in the meantime, that is just crazy.
Yeah, that's why we left, because we couldn't do it anymore, right?
Exactly. So I just remember being really yucky about it. And I just thought it was my control freak nature. Kelly, you're not in charge. It's okay. Let them, But I really dove in and said, you need to serve more. You need to study more. You need this. You need that. And then when I was released as the Stake Young Women's president, I volunteered because I knew it was hard. I'd done it so long. I was the stake camp director. Because it was my jam. I literally have been to girls camp for 12 years in a row. Like, it's what I do. And so I went, and it was the most awful, terrible experience.
In what way?
Well, like I always said that girls camp was where I gained my testimony. It was where I was away from my parents, where I felt the Spirit and knew it was me feeling the Spirit. And so I always felt like, and now it's like, it's the best way to bait and switch these kids. Get them real tired, make them cry a lot and bear their testimony. And so, but I went, and it was really these two women who I was serving with that were so mean and ugly and vindictive. And for example, we were renting a facility from the YMCA. The girls were being girls. They hit a piece of glass and the window broke. And it's like, that stuff happens, and the YMCA is used to doing this, and it's not a big deal. The first response from one of the stake leaders was, "Can we sue them?"
Oh, wow.
And I was just like shocked by this. And I said, and I'm the leader.
And who was she talking about? Who did she want to sue?
YMCA, the facility that we were renting and had bent over backwards to help us. Like, I mean, they did things for us that they do not do for other people. And so I was just like, it was so ugly. And I asked her, I said, they looked at me because I had been there so long. And they said, I said, first of all, are the girls okay? Yes, nobody's hurt. I said, okay, that's fine. I'll call and we'll get it fixed. And she was adamant, no. Well, if they're hurt, we can sue them. Are you sure they're not hurt? And it was just so vindictive and so just
not Christ-like, not very Christ-like.
No. And I was like, we're supposed to be setting an example, blah, blah, blah. So that really started that whole thing. And I just really felt like you just need to dive deeper. So I got onto the essays and started reading the essays and just going through them. And I read the whole polygamy thing, and I was like, ugh, that's always not with me anyway. Book of Abraham, all traditional things. Then in late August, early September, right when school started, I got the CES letter. And
what do you mean you got it? Like you got a hold of it, or somebody gave it to you?
I had heard about it. I had heard other friends had talked about it, and I finally got the guts to download it and read it. Ironically, my husband had read it a month earlier and told me, don't do it unless you're ready. And so I did. I read it, and it took me about 4 days. And at the time, I was the ward chorister. It's a big call from Stake Young Women's president to ward chorister. And I was sitting on the stand listening to them talk, and I realized that I was rolling my eyes as people were speaking.
Wow. Understand. That's awesome.
So I start really trying to focus, and Scooter, my husband, hadn't gone to church that day for some reason. And they called me in the bishop's office and asked me to be the primary chorister. And I was sick because I had just finished the CES letter. I knew And I sat there, and I remember it was like a surreal feeling of, they have no discernment.
Mm-hmm.
He said, we prayed and we feel strongly that and I was like, there's no way. There's no way
Mm-hmm.
I felt strongly, because I don't even know that I don't have a testimony anymore. And all this is I can do music and I'm good with kids because I'm a school teacher.
Right.
This is just a facility thing.
Yeah.
So, I told him I'd have to think about it. I cried, grabbed my girls, drove home, cried the whole way home, never went back. That's it.
All right. Well, let's leave it at this. I have a ton of questions, of course, but we're going to let Monica do her introduction, and then I'll go back. Monica, tell us who you are, where you're from, how you grew
Hi.
up, your relationship with the church, what made you leave.
Okay. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm Monica O'Brien, formerly known as Monica Valentino, and I am a convert to the church. My mom was a single mother, and I have two sisters, and we all joined the church back in 1988, and I was almost
where at?
14.
Where were you?
In Connecticut.
Okay.
Connecticut. The church was honestly the best thing, with my mom being a single mom, and I was always an overweight child. I'm an overweight adult anyway. So the church was good as far as like a foundation, which I will never say anything bad about, the family values. I think that's great that the church offers that. So I went through my teenage years. I always felt very like I never really fit in, but I liked the unity that the church brought, I guess. I always, as a teenager, always felt like I should serve a mission. And so I went through a little bit of a rebellious stage when I graduated from high school, and kind of never really fell away from the church, but definitely had a hard time conforming.
Mm-hmm.
And then I decided to serve a mission. I was, like the other lady said, I was very disappointed when I got my mission call. I felt like I wasn't good enough for the Lord and that they didn't trust me, and that's why I was sent to Temple Square. But like Kelly said, I felt like it was a really good experience for me, and I absolutely enjoyed it, and would have never traded any other mission for that. I enjoyed it. But with that being said, I struggled every day on my mission to conform. And I remember being threatened that I was going to get sent home if I didn't start dressing the way they wanted me to, wearing, the right kind of lipstick. And and that when I look back now, the warning signs were there. That I remember one day I was presenting Legacy, and some lady called the mission president up and told him that she couldn't feel the spirit because of the color of my lipstick.
Wow.
And I got and I got called into the mission president's office, and my only response was, well, then she wasn't there for the right reasons. Like, that's ridiculous.
That is extreme. That is extreme.
Yeah.
Wow.
So anyway, so I'm done with my mission. I go back home to Connecticut, and then I lived in Atlanta, Georgia for a while. And I didn't get married until I was almost 26. I moved to Arizona. I remember going to Kelly's wedding reception. Anyway, and so I moved to Arizona, and I meet my first husband at a singles activity. But all this whole time, never really feeling like I fit in the church. I was always very much spirit of the law, never letter of the law. Like I would do stuff on Sundays. Like I wasn't the Molly Mormon cookie cutter type ever. And I was never, my entire almost 18 years of marriage. And so I started having children, and my ex-husband was not the greatest provider. We struggled a lot, and I was very grateful for several ward families that helped us out, but I always felt like I could never serve enough to pay back or to do enough for any of the church members to ever feel like I was righteous enough. And so I had several different callings throughout my church Relief Society time. I served in the primary. I was the visiting teaching coordinator many times. I was in the primary presidency, and I my last calling I had was a Relief Society teacher. And I remember, so I decided to leave the church. It was 3 years ago here in May. The Facebook picture came up recently. It was the last time I went was Mother's Day 3 years ago. And so my falling away was a little bit different. I always struggled with feeling like I fit in. And then I went through a weight loss journey, and I was able to get confidence. And then I got a job outside of the home, and realized that there were some really amazing people that weren't in my little Mormon bubble that I lived in here. I lived in Mesa, Arizona at the time. And it just opened my eyes to so many things. And then I became very close to a gentleman that was my workout partner, and I spent lots of time with him, and we were nothing but friends. It was just a really eye-opening experience that there were other people out there that could treat me well and encourage me, and that's not something I had from my home life. I had 5 amazing miracle children that I love and adore and spend as much time as I can with them. They live with their dad, but I couldn't be, and I was done living in a loveless marriage, and I felt it, and I knew it. I just was afraid to make the next step to leave. And so at the time, like I said, I was teaching in Relief Society, and I remember telling my bishop, I'm not going to be here this Sunday. Or I was telling the Relief Society president, I'm not going to be here this Sunday, so you're going to have to find a substitute. And that went on for like 3 months. And I'm like, I'm not coming back. Like, you need to find a replacement. And they refused to release me. They wanted me to stay teaching. And I remember the bishop calling my ex-husband into his office and telling him, like, you need to show her how special she is. We want her to stay. And they were doing everything they could to keep me in. And by this point, my heart wasn't in it. I remember the last lesson I taught in Relief Society feeling so guilty because I knew that my heart wasn't in it. I hated my husband. I was just living the motions for several months by this point. And finally, I wanted to find happiness for myself. And so when I finally did leave and move out from my ex-husband, and I wanted the transition to be as simple as possible, the children stayed with him. I had moved out, and it wasn't until probably a year or so later when I started to dig into some of the things that I could, like, about the church. I started listening to podcasts about the church, and was really amazed. And now when I look back at it, like, I really see like how brainwashed I was. And my children are still being raised in it, and my family is still very active in it. I left out one very important thing. My current husband, when he and I met, he's atheist, and I just remember like building our relationship upon something other than gospel truths. And what a better relationship we have. He's my best friend. We have so much fun together. And so I remember him telling me I should find a support group, because I'm sure all of you have felt this when you left. Like, you thought you had friends, and then all of a sudden you're so alone and nobody really wants to be your friend. And you become kind of the talk of the gossip. Like, I remember my daughter telling me so many times, oh, sister so-and-so's wondering when you're going to come back to church. And I always tell my kids that I love them, and I want them to be happy, but church is just not for me. I just want them to make the choice that they want to make. So now here we are. I've been married to my husband almost a year, and he often reminds me, you are not Mormon anymore. Quit being so hard on yourself. Quit judging yourself, because it definitely is a religion where it doesn't matter what you do. It's just you're never going to be good enough. And so I struggle with that every day.
Yeah,
So.
thank you. How was it for you to discover the church is not that true beloved church that you've always had? Like, how did you take that? And then if you went in the depths of misery, maybe not, like I did. I went into the depths of misery. How did you pull yourself out of that? And what is it now that you appreciate? And let the listener understand that clearly we were loving the church and serving and give, our life, our time, our money, our everything to the church. So, and I have a feeling that you also, like me, where it's not like, oh, it was all bad, and no, there's a lot of good. And still there is a lot of good that we keep and that we have memories of.
Well, at the time, because mine came crashing down within like weeks. So it was a horrific experience. So my mom had died, and I think I would equivalent that to almost as painful as my mother dying, because this is your foundation and your whole world, and all of a sudden it's gone in an instant. For me, that's what it felt like. And I felt like I had nothing, like, what do I do now? Like, oh my gosh. And my husband at the time, he was out of town on business. And so I was going through this and talking to him on the phone, but he was very supportive. And I would tell me things, and I would go upstairs and I'd be like, oh my gosh, listen to this. And I'd tell my kids. So I probably handled it completely the wrong way.
So how old were your children?
What I did, it was wrong. Like, do not do that.
How old were your children? And then you would share with them that you were having a faith crisis?
Yeah, I'm very open and honest with my kids. So my oldest is 18, and I have 18, 17, 15, 12, and then a 6-year-old, so the the little boy, obviously, but my older teenagers, I would share with them. But I was also open. I said, this is what the new thing that I've learned. Your dad and I have decided to take a break from church, and we had this whole gossiping thing going on too, which was a horrible thing. Like, the Lord turned completely against us. But so that was kind of our thing. We're taking a break, but if you want to go to activities, you can. So one of them would go once in a while, but then it got too uncomfortable, and then that whole policy changed with the 11-year-old boys got to everybody got to move up at the beginning of the year, and her birthday was November, so she had to wait a whole year being called a baby, right, from the other 12-year-old girls. So that was her.
Which is kind of ridiculous, because the point is for people to feel good about.
I think our biggest thing was just the non-support, like you give everything you've been given to the church. I mean, like Kelly or Monica or you devoted your whole time, your whole talent, your everything that you do. My husband was on the high council. He was gone all the time. I was gone all the time. My kids were busy. It just started getting very overwhelming. Like everything was church, 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 right? And then all of a sudden it's gone. And you're like, oh my gosh, what now? Like I fell down a hole. I mean, it was hard, but I think that the biggest thing is just to find some people that you can chat with, that you can work things out with, that you can say, well, did you hear this? You know, and then you guys can get together and go like, okay, I am not going crazy. Because when I would talk to some people, they would brush it off, or they come up with a different excuse, or
because
you know,
it's
well,
scary.
you know, yeah,
Because
it's very
so your way of screaming kind of on the rooftop, because I was the same way in I didn't post on Facebook, but I would write to my close friends, and it was a
and
lot.
you're angry, and it comes across bad, like you're bashing the church. You're not bashing the church. You're trying to find out the truth, and you're saying, why did Joseph Smith do this? You know, and then they can't answer, and you're like, I can't believe a prophet of God would do that. Right. So it was a really hard thing to deal with. And before this happened, like when you're processing this whole thing, I had a lot of cognitive dissonance. I remember crying in the shower, shaking, like, I know this church is true, but I also don't think this church is true. So like,
yes,
be true, right? So you're going crazy. And so my advice would be, find a group, find some therapy, you know, get through it, talk it out. And then also, once you get that out, realize, okay, now I got to move on. I got to move on with my life. I have to let that shit go, right? You gotta put that aside, and you have to move on and go, this is my life now. And if you're having, like, I have a few friends who are still very, very angry, and it's been over a year, and I'm like, okay, well, you might want to go get some help. Because you can't let that also hinder your life. You need to live your life and love your life and enjoy your life. And I'm having so much fun. I'm doing things I've never done. I got a tattoo. I drink and go out with my husband, and it's just been really fun and relaxing. And everything, you know, you think when you leave the church, your life is going to fall apart. Everything's going to be ruined. Nothing's going to be happy anymore, and like you're going to get a divorce, you know, all this stuff is going through your
these
head.
things did happen to me, but I still wouldn't go back.
Right, but it gets better, and live your life and enjoy your life. And now I just, like, I don't know the answer. I don't know if there's a God. I don't know if there isn't a God. I don't know if we're reincarnated. I have no idea. And I used to think, wow, how could you think that? Because my mom had died, and the church had given me so much comfort, right? But now I think, you know what? I just don't know. I just don't know, and it's okay that I don't know.
And you get comfortable. You get comfortable with the idea of not knowing, and that I really appreciate that, because at the end of the day, it's all beliefs, which are not facts. And to me, that equals speculation, because we don't know. We don't know shit. And people, and being raised a Mormon, we are so much about the knowing. We know that Joseph Smith is a prophet of God. We know that the Book of Mormon is true. We know that the church is true. We don't know. I mean, when a 6-year-old, a 5-year-old stand up on the podium and says that, it is so damaging, even to not correct that. Because at least say, I believe, I have faith, but do not confuse knowledge for facts, because then it confuses a whole lot of other things in your brain.
That's not what we're taught in the church.
Absolutely. And so coming out of that mindset is a real process. It's a hard and a real process to coming out of that mindset of, you know what, you don't know anything, and you have to accept that and feel good about it, or not care.
And then
you know,
you realize you don't know, and nobody knows. Like the prophet doesn't know. The bishop doesn't know.
The prophet doesn't know. Nobody knows.
So then it's more comfortable, and you can move on. And I would just suggest that you move on and you try to find something else to fill your time with, or whatever you want to do. just try to enjoy life and take things as they come, you know. So
Yeah.
I think when issues come up, then I feel more open-minded to other people and their views. I feel more, and I thought I was pretty open-minded before. I mean, I'm a Mormon that voted for Obama, right? So I'm just saying, I felt I was before, but now you can really feel it.
Right,
Hard.
so
I understand that it's hard for people, and I understand that you're gonna, you know, some people aren't gonna be able to continue to be your friend or whatever,
right,
because
they don't want their world. They don't want their world to be shaken.
but they don't understand that we're not out to get anybody. I mean, if that's what you believe and that's what you love and it does good for you, I'm not going to question. I'm not going to try to turn you against the church or turn you against your family or I'm just here to say, like, this is what I found out.
Yes.
And as me personally,
and it's disturbing.
Knowledge,
It's really disturbing.
I can't support it anymore, right? Like me as a feminist, I can't support the way the church history was. I think somebody said it once, like, well, if the KKK changed their point of view and decided to let everybody in and be welcoming to everybody, would you become a member of the KKK? And you're like, no, because of their history, right? That's kind of how I feel. Like, if the church does make changes, great, but I can't support it because I can't support that kind of history that happened in the past. So
let's go to Kelly real quick and see how it was for you to find out all these things and how were you able to come out of, you know, that all that discovery and that journey of transitioning.
Mine was really fast as well. And I would say that my saving grace was my husband. Scooter he is articulate, well thought out. He's thoughtful and kind, and, you know, he's just exactly what you hope for as a little girl when you think about getting married. You know, he's always puts me first. And so he had been going through this for about 10 years, having the cognitive dissonance. I remember him getting into a huge heated discussion in priesthood because they were talking about John Kerry and George W. Bush. And he said, we're not supposed to be talking about this. This is, you know, politics is not what we're supposed to be doing. And it started, he was in the bishopric. I was in the Relief Society presidency. A lady went to the bishop and said that we were not worthy to hold callings or temple recommends because we were Democrats.
Wow.
I mean, we live in Texas, you know.
That's pretty strong.
And so it was rough, and he really struggled with that. And I was like, the church is true, it's fine. And just went on. When the shelf and everything started to break and fall down, though, it was really he and I together. Once I remember I read the CES letter, went to church that Sunday, walked out after first hour. And Wednesday night, we took our girls to church. We live 35 minutes to the church building from our house. And so we would take them to Wednesday night, and we'd just sit in the parking lot and just talk and, you know, hang out. And I told him, he goes, so what's going on? Where are you? And I said, well, tonight when I shower, I'm not putting my garments back on. And he said, what? I said, I'm done. I said, I can't live this life. I have 2 daughters, and at the time they were 14 and 12. I said, I can't raise 2 strong girls and expect them to be subservient to some man because he holds the priesthood. That's all a bunch of bunk. I mean, my girls are named Dandelion and Dahlia. They're not wilty, you know, sit on the side of the road kind of gals. They get that from their father. So, I mean, so it was just that we would go on drives. We'd listen to a lot of John Dehlin, a John DeLynn, listen to your Mormon stories. Last spring break, we were driving back from Vegas and listened to your and it's surreal that was the thing, is to find somebody who, like, you're not crazy. This was the biggest thing. When I was going through it, Lesa was going through it, and I saw her post on Facebook, and I knew Lesa, but I didn't know Lesa. So I private messaged her and said, "Hey, are you bi?" And it's a weird thing to bring up because there's Mormons.
You never know. You never know.
Don't, and they're scared of us. They're
Yeah.
scared, and especially when you've been Relief Society president, you've been in primary, you've been in Young Women's, you've done all of these things. And, you know, I mean, how many times have I had young girls say, "I went on a mission because of you, because of your lessons," or in your example.
Yeah, it's hard.
That's hard, and I didn't want my girls to have to go through that. The big struggle at our house, honestly, my husband is sick. Like, he has a really crazy rare neurological disease. And so ripping the Band-Aid off of the church, the hardest part was the beauty of the church, of the eternal families, of just the neat, tidy packaging that the gospel and the church provided. Because I really do like my husband, and I really do like my kids, and the idea of being with them forever was very comforting.
Of course.
I loved that whole aspect. I loved that there was a reason for everything and a why for everything.
Yep.
When my husband and I were full-time musicians, and didn't have jobs. We just played honky tonks in Texas, and I ended up getting pregnant. So healthcare was an issue. And so I went to a local clinic to find out and make sure I was pregnant and all of this stuff, so I could start getting, you know, all the things that you need to take care of yourself when you're pregnant. And it was a faith-based organization. And I put that I was LDS. And this woman raked me across the coals. Told me I was wrong. Told me that her way was the only way. And that she had read all about the church, knew this, this, and this. And she goes, "And here's the thing. If I'm right, you will burn in hell."
Oh, wow.
If you're right, it doesn't matter, because you'll do my work for me in your temple. No, she's got a point.
Wow. That is insane. That is insane.
Yeah. So I don't think, and I was talking, Scooter and I were talking about this, getting ready for tonight, and just, going over everything. How far, it's only been not even quite 2 years. A year ago, if you would have said, "Do you want to take your name off the records of the church?" I would have been like, "No, not that I wasn't going back, but I just wasn't ready." And now it's like, I don't care. I'm so at peace with where we are. My
Yes.
girls are thriving. We're happy. And really, honestly, our church is love. Our church is kindness. Our is every day making the most out of what we have and what we've worked to have. It's not that we've been given this. We've worked for what we have, and we've worked for our relationships, for our possessions, for everything. And I'm really proud of that. And I was always taught you can't be proud of things. There's no such thing as righteous pride. Ezra Taft Benson said that. And so I'm really proud of where we are and the love that we have and the love that my girls have. And that like Lesa said, it's okay not to know. It's okay to question. And I think, Alma said that faith is to believe in something you haven't seen without having a perfect knowledge of that something. Well, I have faith in my family. I have faith in my girls. I have faith in my marriage. I don't have a perfect knowledge of that. Believe in it. And I think that's kind of where our focus is. It's not it's not the what's going to happen tomorrow, it's what's going to happen today emphasis that I love about the freedom that we have,
Yes.
that we've gained.
Yes, I think it resonates with all of us. And I love how you said, like, yes, I'm proud of what we worked for, because to me, the image that comes to mind is like a surgeon who just saved a life and succeeded in a surgery should be proud of what he just did, because it was his work, and the family you build is your work. And yeah, sure, whatever, people who believe may praise God and whatnot, but you know what? It's people working to make the things work and to make the things what they are. So yes, be proud of it, I mean, you deserve it. Monica, let's go to you and hear your story. And then after that, I'm going to just leave it kind of open. Go ahead.
Okay, so when I decided that I was not going to be in the church anymore, it definitely caused problems in my already failing marriage. And I remember he was willing to go to counseling, but we can only go to an LDS counselor. And I was not, I didn't want to be told, read your scriptures, go to the temple, pray, and everything will be all better, because I was past that. I knew in my heart I didn't want to be in the church anymore. And as one of you were talking, it reminded me of I think Kelly said that Lesa had put something on Facebook, and I remember it was the kids were going back to school, and it was either meet the teacher or the curriculum night right after school started, and I had stopped wearing my garments by this point, and I went in a sleeveless shirt. And I remember some lady from my stake saying hi to me, and the way she glared at my shoulders. And I came home and I wrote a Facebook post about that I was going to take a year sabbatical. And I was going to leave the church for a year, and then I would figure things out. And I remember my coworker at the time, who I respected so much, that was not Mormon. He told me, "You will never go back." And I would say, "Oh no, I will. When the sabbatical's over, if I feel in my heart that it's the right thing, I'll go back." And sure enough, there was no way I was going to go back. I was still married, but at the time had met my current husband. In my mind, my marriage was already over. Everything was just spiraling out of control. And I knew how much happiness John, my husband, brought me. And I knew that that I definitely was done with the church. And I had touched on it a little bit earlier. All of the friends that I thought I had, and now I was in a very lonely place when it came to the church, because nobody really wanted to be my friend, and all of the rumors that were going on about me. And so it definitely, there was a time where it was lonely. My family didn't want much to do with me. They were so unhappy with all of my choices. And luckily, 3 years later, and actually it happened last year, all of my family has definitely come around, and they see I still get emotional. They see the amazing man that I married. And the thing that I love is that it has nothing to do with Jesus or any kind of foundation. He's a good man. And I always remind my kids that you don't need to have any kind of religion. Doesn't matter if you smoke, you drink, people are still good. And that's the one thing that I hope they will take away from all of this, because they don't have the normal Molly Mormon, Peter Priesthood home where they have a mom and a dad that are married and in the church. I mean, they still go to church with my ex and their step monster, but they know that that I always preach kindness. Like, it's so important to be kind, and especially you've mentioned through COVID. When my kids come over and they're fighting and they're not being very nice to them, I always remind them that there's so much craziness in the world right now, and there's so many people who are dying from this disease, And the one thing that I hope they can be is just kind and loving to one another. And that's the motto I want them to know, that's what I preach. That's my religion, kindness and love.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And I think Kelly said that too. And, you know, and living in the now. And you kind of tap into something, but like the non-judgment, like you say, yeah, even people drink and they smoke, you know what? They are good people out there, you know, regardless, like look inside of people. And, you know,
I didn't realize that the church, like when other religions, and then you'd leave and you'd be shunned. I never realized like our church actually does that. Like they don't come out and say they're shunning you, but they don't invite you to things anymore. And they don't, you know, they don't come over anymore unless it's their 1 monthly visit, right? Or 1 month text. Like I left and it blew up. I mean, it was mentioned in state conference about like, you know, not being easily offended. And everyone knew it was directed at me, but it was like everybody I thought I was friends with, that I confided in, that was trying to help me through this, just left, like never contacted me again, just dropped off the face of the earth, you know? And I was so surprised. Like I think I'm just more surprised about things because I didn't have that. I never shunned people. Like when I reached out to all the people I knew that had left. Like I was still friends with all these people, or like I didn't understand the patriarchy so much because I didn't see it as much, because my husband, like you guys have said, you guys have great loving husbands. So I never saw that we weren't equal. I never saw that before, you know, until you see the woman praying for the first time in 2014 or something. Like I was like, how did I? And I was like, it never dawned on me because I never noticed. I was like, what? Women didn't pray until then? I had no idea. Like it just I never focused on that stuff, right? You just kind of go on and move on. And I think part of it is because my family life was so good, and that we had such a strong loving relationship, and that he never treated me less than equal. We always worked together, that I never noticed it before. And so then when you read about the history of the church, and you read about in that Saints book, so the Saints book led me to Fair Mormon, which is an LDS site that's an apologetic site, which also led me to CES Letter, because they'd mentioned it on that site. And I was like, what is that? So it kind of made me go down this rabbit hole. But some of those things in history, I didn't know that blacks didn't have the priesthood. Right? Like Joseph Smith gave blacks the priesthood. It talked about it in the Saints book. And I didn't realize Joseph Smith had like Fanny Alger way before temple ceremony was even a thing. Right? He had another wife. And I was like, what is going on? So
I think Monica was asking you a question. I think, Monica, you were asking a question. Oh, you're blocking out. I think you're...
Yes. What was the site that you said you went on?
Oh, it's called Fair Mormon. FAIR Mormon. It's okay. And I didn't even know anything about it either until so I really studied that Saints book, and I followed all the links and it took me to there. So, and it took me to the essays, which I didn't even know existed. And they came out in 2014?
13, probably around there.
And this was like 2018. And I'm like, what are these? How come we didn't know about these? You know, and we served on Temple Square.
I didn't know about
history mission.
Right.
How did we not know this stuff?
Yeah, that's a blow.
Oh my gosh.
Absolutely. Monica,
I find out that you were telling all these lies, like on Temple Square. You know, they would tell you to say things about polygamy and say things, and then you read the book or you study the essays, and you're like, wait a minute. That's not what they had to tell people.
and now it feels so icky to have been in the Beehive house, and like, because I mean, it always felt really strange to me, but I was kind of like, it was that cognitive dissonance, right? And maybe we we can move on to Temple Square, unless you Monica or Kelly, if you wanted to add something real quick before we move on to Temple Square.
Oh, I was just saying how I didn't know about any of the essays until I started listening to the podcast
Yeah.
that the ex-Mormon files. And I remember asking my ex-husband about it because I'm like, wait, does everybody know about these? And he kind of just brushed it off, and I've just left it at that.
Well,
Yeah.
you know what's really upsetting is I was the Relief Society president. You know, it's not like I'm some nobody. I spoke at state conference before. Like, and I didn't know it. I didn't know about it, and you feel like you're stupid or like.
Yes, that's what's offensive. I mean, you're a college graduate, you like, above average intelligent, whatever, and then you're like, I know nothing about my church. Like, people on the outside know more than me. That is insulting.
That's the thing too. I
had a lot of pride about that.
that.
I mean, her pride about that, like how much I didn't know.
Yeah,
and yeah. It was funny because when I started writing, I came out and I wrote all these op-eds in the Salt Lake Tribune, and then it was sometimes funny to read the comments, and people were like kind of shaking their heads, so sad, such an intelligent woman, and she doesn't know anything about her church, and they were right,
Yeah.
So sad.
I had friends.
So naive. So naive.
I would post about the Sears stone, and then my friends would be like, you didn't know that? I knew that. I learned that in Institute. And I'm like, no, you did not, because nobody knew that. I don't know what you're talking about.
No, some people
Right,
knew. Some people knew that have, maybe, pioneer ancestry, you talk about history around the dinner table, but it's like, most people don't talk about that stuff around the dinner table. And I'm like, don't have pioneer ancestry. I'm all the way on the other side in Europe. I'm interested in other things, but with 3 hours of church every Sunday, you could have sipped some of that information, little by little, so that when you're 40 years old, you're not like, what,
Real
Anyways.
quick, pull out your gospel art picture. And are there any?
Yes.
Or is it Joseph Smith with golden plates and the curtain and everything?
Exactly.
On. They controlled the narrative, and it wasn't presented to us. And that's,
yes.
I remember on Temple Square is somebody coming and telling me that Joseph Smith had been sealed to other women and that Emma wasn't the first. But
then you're like, anti, blah, 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 don't listen.
I felt yucky when he told me about it. And I was like, oh, he's just anti. But I went and talked to one of the senior elders about it, one that I just loved. And he's like, that's anti. It's fine. And then it got brought up when we had, you know how occasionally we would have general authorities come and speak for the whole mission?
Yeah.
It was the 70s. I don't remember who it was, but he came and it got brought up because that gentleman had come and talked to multiple sister missionaries, of course, about stuff. And it was shocking. And he brought it up and he said, as a 70 and as one of, the Lord's anointed, that's anti. That didn't happen. Joseph Smith did not. And I was like,
wow. So he overtly lied, but probably because he was ignorant himself.
Exactly. And that's the thing. And so when I was angry and wanted to shout from the rooftops about how batshit crazy it all was, I took comfort in that this man was supposed to be leading me, and he's not. And I remember I had a companion. I'm sorry, I'm just going on to the square. Sorry.
It's fine. No, that's good. That's where we're supposed to go now.
So, Monica, do you remember, I don't know if I should say her name, but she would be totally fine. Jenny Weber. She was,
I'm so bad with names. Was she a sister we served with?
Yes, she was my companion when we all found out where we were going to the field and we're called the Gadianton Robbers. Do you remember any of that?
Vaguely, yes.
Okay, so Jenny is brilliant and smart, and we were really struggling, and we had this huge hiccup thing that happened on the square, which, of course seemed incredibly important at the time. And she said, Kelly, if he asks me, meaning the president, to give all of my tours with my finger in my ear, I will do it. She said, because I am held accountable by how well I follow his priesthood.
Wow.
But I know full well it's crazy, and that nobody's going to join the church with me walking around with my finger in my ear. But I do know that he will be held accountable for his poor choices.
Mm.
And it was really insightful. And even though my shelf was being built, that metaphor and analogy was so powerful to me that it was I raised my hand to the square and promised to give all my time and talents for the building of the kingdom of God, all of those things. And I would be held accountable by that. It wasn't my job to judge or to, hold those priesthood leaders accountable. You can hold them accountable because they should be held accountable.
Yeah, now that you bring that up, it's really amazing how the submission to the priesthood and brainwashing is so deep, especially in the temple. And I've heard now hundreds and hundreds of stories. I'm genuinely interested because it keeps on confirming people who don't know each other, don't know anything about each other, telling the same stories and confirming so many different things. Yeah, I mean, in people crying in the temple, realizing, I'm being put into submission here. I didn't even have that because I was just happy giddy, this is great, but some people were more intuitive. Yeah. And they're like, I love my husband.
Swallow it. Like, okay, because we're told we'll learn line upon line. So when you go to the temple and you're like looking, because I remember going through and looking at my parents going, what the hell, right? In my expression. And I just didn't understand what was going on. And I thought, well, they know the church is true. And so this has to be true. And I'll figure it out. And so every time we'd go to the temple as a couple, we'd go in the slush room. I'd be like, did you learn anything? He'd be like, no. I didn't learn anything. And then we'd leave. So it's just that mentality.
You were honest about it. I think I was
you're gonna learn.
So
eventually
hard.
You're gonna figure it out. And I remember President Witt, he had said, someday, if you work hard enough, you will all see the face of God. And it's going to take a lot of work, and you will do it. And I'm still trying to. So it's going to take a lot of work to understand and figure out everything. Because that's what you're taught.
Right. And it's stuff like that keeps you anchored or going, because you're never done learning, and you're never going to reach that moment where you actually see him, in the temple or whatever.
Well, how many times did you read the Book of Mormon? Like they always say, every time you read it, you'll learn something new. Like, I read it like 20 times on my mission. Right?
Yeah, and that brings up the point of Monica, never good enough, right? Never good enough.
Yeah.
Never. Anyways.
It's interesting you were mentioning the temple, and I remember being so quiet about the fact that I struggled every time I went into the temple. And I loved when I have 5 kids. I loved every time I was pregnant because the Mesa temple stays so hot, and that was my excuse that I didn't have to go sit through a session because I was afraid that I would pass out. And or then when I was nursing, I couldn't be gone long enough to go and sit through a session. But the temple work was definitely, I would make every excuse possible to not have to go do temple work because I struggled with it. And then the more I listened to podcasts, I realized I was very quiet about things that bothered me because I always wanted to fit in and never want people to think that I was questioning authority. But I realized that I wasn't alone, and that there's lots of people who felt that. I remember coming home last summer, I listened to the podcast a lot, and I would tell my husband, like, oh my gosh, and I felt this, and I never said anything because I didn't want to feel like I was crazy. But there's a lot of people out there that also feel that.
I think
Emperor's New
I think a lot of people, probably a lot more than even want to say something. Like, I remember the very first time I went, and it was in Frankfurt, and I went with like half of my ward. And because, European, we don't have temple clothes, we go for like literally like 3 to 5 days in a row, and we sleep there. They have like a guest house attached to the temple. It was kind of cool because it's like you're in heaven, because you're in white and you just stay in white for like 5 days and you walk around like little angels. But I remember the very first time, and it's almost like you're like on drugs or something, except you're not, but that's what religion is. Like you're like you're high on like spirits, whatever. And then I remember the first time I went to a session, and I kid you not, I had to, the very first time, like, they're putting the hats and whatnot, and I have to bite my lip because I was going to burst laughing. But, and then I look around and saw people I know and stuff, and I'm like, oh, I'm probably nervous, or, but it was just so freaking strange. But of course, after 2-3 days, and literally we do like 3-4 sessions a day, and then the next day, and then the next day, well, yeah, you brainwashed after a while, right? It's like,
Yeah.
Normal.
you can't help but be brainwashed.
But I mean, I did love the celestial room, and who wouldn't love sitting in the celestial room?
I loved it all. I
and
soaked it in. I loved it all. And on
and
Temple
some people we know
Square,
love it because they like the ritual. They think it's, that they like that part of the spirituality. But yeah.
and Temple Square was actually pretty funny because you remember it was live sessions. Like even when I went, it was still the live session, and it was these old people playing like Adam and Eve and whatnot. And it was just funny. And
interesting. I remember one time we went through a session and there wasn't enough men, and I was like blown away by how they just had all the women go up there, and I thought, what? But you just everything's just interesting, and they make it all work. And like you said, you go often enough, then it feels normal, and it's not anymore. And
I mean, I don't want to play down on it. I mean, when I was in it, I was 200% in it. Like I was actually, I loved it, and I had some really, spiritual experiences, because you are prone to have them. I mean, it's a setup for you to have that happen. You know what I mean? So I'm not gonna say it didn't happen, but I can now see how, when I was in nature, or, I traveled the world, like I had those same kind of feelings of like grandeur and belonging. Like I don't think it's any different, feeling connected. Monica, how was your mission? Like maybe share a couple of experience, good, weird, bad, like how was it for you?
I mean, overall, I felt like it was a good experience, and I definitely learned a lot. I learned how to come out of my comfort zone, and be able to communicate. I feel like it gave me good communicative skills, having to give tours to people I didn't know, and I'm not shy when it comes to public speaking. I'm in the wedding industry, and I'm a sous chef, and I sometimes have to be out there in front of people, and so that I feel like I learned confidence in that sense from my mission.
Mm-hmm.
I also had, several great experiences spiritually that I remember very well. But at the same time, it was a big challenge, being able to conform. And one thing that I remember, now, Lesa, what was your last name on the mission?
It was Burley, Sister Burley.
Okay, I have a really bad memory, and like I don't know.
No, it's okay. I was just telling her we were talking about that. Like somebody in my ward was from our mission, and I couldn't remember her at all. But she's all in my photo album. I'm like, oh shoot. So yeah, it happens. No worries. I remember you. You had cute. I thought you were gorgeous. I don't know what they're talking about. Your lipstick. I didn't.
Oh, thank you.
Of course, all Temple Square sister missionaries are the most beautiful women in the church, right? So
yes,
own it.
that is such a funny thing.
stereotype.
of course we're biased. We serve there, so we're not going to be like, no.
It used to
But-
make me angry when people would say that. I'm like, come on, I just go there because my looks. But now I just own it and I say, yes, you're right.
Yes.
We are.
Well, yeah, when I said I wanted to serve a mission all the way in Belgium, like all the Americans serving there, sister elders were like, you're going to go to Temple Square, you're going to go to Temple. And I was the same way. I wanted to go, one of you said that, like, I wanted to go like to Africa or somewhere hard, like, where like a real mission, like, because in my mind, I envision, not just kind of the Mormon mission, but like other Christian missions where they go to like, third world countries or like, the real stuff. and then I get the posh Temple Square. But I was excited because it was far away from me. It was still far away. And also I had a lot of friends living in Salt Lake and Utah. So I knew they would come and say hi, which they did. And that was kind of cool. Like all former missionaries or people who were friends.
We had visitors all the time, so it was weird when they're like, So I actually got along with most of my companions very well. I never had a problem with the sisters, which I was surprised because I thought, I don't like girls. But it turned out really good. I loved all my companions on Temple Square. Now, when I went to Post Falls, Idaho, Spokane, Washington mission for my 4 months, because they send us out usually in the winter for 4 months. My mission companion there picked me up, and the first thing she said to me was, "I hate Temple Square sisters." I thought, this is gonna be fun. But it worked out fine. I'm a pretty easygoing. I mean, she was difficult to deal with. She wouldn't get up. She wouldn't move. She wouldn't do anything. But I just kind of went with the flow, and it worked out fine. But I never really had too many problems on my mission with companions. It was fun though, because you'd get your transfer days and you'd go down the hall, or you'd switch rooms, or it wasn't like a big
Temple Square was fun.
Yeah. You go up a floor, down a floor.
Yeah.
It was fun. And you're all there, and you're all like in a big, there's like a 2-bedroom apartment, and one companion's in the living room and 2 are in the bedrooms, and you're all having a good time. And I thought it was fun. I had a couple of companions. One had really stinky feet because we had to wear those nylons. The nylons. Remember the nylons? That was
of course. We're traumatized by the nylons.
Who was it with the stinky feet?
Oh, I won't say, because she'll probably be so embarrassed. She's like, I can't tell you that, But
no, I remember going into someone's apartment and they would soak their feet every night when they would come home.
And so I would make her put her shoes outside. I'm like, your feet are so stinky. You take your shoes off outside.
Well,
I'm
not gonna say the name, and she may not listen to this. Maybe she will. But I had a companion who unapologetically farted all the time in the apartment and laughed and laughed and laughed. And I was just appalled. And she would make fun of me.
I never do that.
Oh no, she would make fun of me because she was, and there were a lot of us in there, like 4 of us, and she would just do it and just laugh and laugh and laugh, like consistently. And then she would make fun of me because, I was like the prissy Euro, proper Euro. And I'm like, no, people just don't fart in front of other people.
That's hilarious. But there was some weird things on Temple Square, like, man, they were so picky about what you wore, right? Yeah. You had to have exactly what you're wearing. And if they noticed that you weren't wearing what you were supposed to be wearing, they'd send you back, make you change your clothes.
Yep.
We would have talks about how to dress, what to eat.
Yeah.
And then cleaning our apartment. They were like obsessed with making us homemakers and having a sparkling clean apartment. It drove me crazy. Overall, Temple Square was great. I'm trying to think of, it was fun because one time, remember Elder Oaks, the really tall, really smiley apostle? We were walking into church. Yeah, and we were walking into Temple Square, and he was like, "Good morning, sisters," and you turn around and you're like, oh my gosh, hi, good morning, you know.
Yeah.
And Elder Haight was on a tour with me and held my hand. And I mean, those things you just don't get on other missions, right?
Yeah, we
The
were
apostles and
really close to general authorities. I think I shook hands at the time when I served with almost all of them, because
yeah.
we were allowed to go downstairs in the tunnels and after general conference, and they would come in their little golf carts, and they would stop, and we would just kind of line up, and they would shake our hands and say hi,
And even the
and we were
prophet
like,
now.
oh my gosh, they're like
Did you guys
celebrities,
meet
right?
Nelson? Yeah.
Excuse
Did
me?
you guys meet Nelson, the prophet, today?
No. Oh, well, yeah. At the time,
Yes.
he was an apostle, so I
Jackson
guess
and
I
I
did.
were standing at the south gate, you know, where the ZCMI mall was.
Yep.
And it was kind of raining, and we had our umbrellas, and he ran in and was like, I just want to tell you, sisters, that you're doing a great job. And then ran off, and we're like, you're doing a great job too. Thanks.
Oh yeah. We just gobbled. I mean, it's not like they're mean or
No,
bad
they're
or
great.
anything like that. I mean, they're definitely into what they're doing. I don't have anything bad to say. Like, I was growing up in Belgium, anytime general authorities would come, I mean, I would make sure I was like singing in the choir so I could be like super close, and then go like, oh, can I shake your hand?
Now looking back, you can see like, man, they do like kind of worship them, and there is kind of like
there's a leadership cult.
Yes, but at the time you didn't think anything of it, but now you're like, oh, that's probably not
yeah. And they try to deem it, they try to like bring it down, you know, but it's still there, and there is this like kind of royalty among, you know, who knows who and who's related to who, and you know. Yeah, for sure. But
we did some crazy things too. Like remember the Halloween parties? I don't know if you got to do this, but they were awesome. They would close down Temple Square, and all the sisters would like slide down the North Visitor Center escalator, like a big slide. And
wow.
It was so much fun.
Yeah, no. Christmas was as well.
Huh?
Yeah. Christmas as well.
Yes.
Yeah, Christmas.
Thanksgiving. I mean, we partied. Like, I was even shocked. I'm like, you know, we were all dressed up, and we had like talent shows. Like, we just went underground in the South Visitor Center, I think, where the theater was, and made a big like stage, and it was so fun. It was really fun.
And then I have pictures of me like sneaking up on top of the Christus, and I'm
wow.
and I'm in the Book of Mormon. You know when they had that big like, what is that called, where all those statues, and they were all like Nephites or whatever?
The Rotunda?
No, the one in the, I don't know if it was there when you were there, but it was in the South Visitor Center when you did the Book of Mormon tour.
Yeah.
So Jocelyn and I snuck up on there. And then security came running in because we were taking our picture with the statues and stuff.
Oh, wow.
And then one time we snuck out. Yeah, I was a little bit crazy, but I mean, I was good. I was a good missionary, but you gotta have some fun, right? So.
I'm sure you were. So Monica, tell us a bit about your experience on Temple Square. Companions, good, bad.
So my MTC companion was horrible, but, and she ended up going home early from her mission. And then my trainer, who I'm still friends with on Facebook, was from Finland, Sister Immonen, Jana. I loved her. She was amazing. And then I had good companions. There was a couple here and there where we didn't get along, but like I said, I had a really hard time conforming. And I'm pretty easygoing. I'm very open-minded. Out in the field, I had some good companions. I went to the San Fernando, California mission. I had one companion there. Years later, she sent me an apology letter, because she would introduce me and she would be like, well, she's only from Temple Square and she doesn't know this stuff. And we were on bikes. We were on bikes, and we would be riding along, and I didn't know the area, and she would take a sharp turn, And I remember falling off of my bike several times because I was trying to keep up with her.
Oh,
So,
that's mean.
but other than that, I had great experience on Temple Square. I remember, I don't know if you guys remember the guy that would come, he would seek out specific missionaries. He had a specific odor, like you can smell his cologne. And I knew he was like sneaking up on me. I believe his name was Ray. He was very interesting.
It's funny.
They
Yeah.
were all trying to get us an address so they could write us. It's like, go away.
That is funny. There were like those habituals, right? Like we had a homeless person, we had a trans person coming all the time. I mean, there were like a dozen of people who were just well known. They would just come by all the time. There was, of course, the anti people who would always show up and try to like show us the way. But yeah, it was interesting how they were part of the whole thing, right?
Yeah, they were part of the experience. I remember there was one guy who had gotten sent home from his mission, and he would come find me to talk to me, and he was like this big, huge pot smoker. And I remember I was so like open-minded. I'm like, I used to tell him, oh, everything's going to be just fine. And it's so weird, like years later, you know, now that I'm in my 40s and I look back and I'm like thinking, here I was giving these people advice in my young 20s, and I'm now 45 and still I'm looking for advice.
Right? Because we know it all. As missionaries, we know everything.
Right.
No way. Very cool. So
Oh,
your companions were fine. You said,
do you guys know, do you remember this? Please bring me my scriptures when the crazies would call.
Yep.
oh yes. Hey, we used that too. That was like the code. Yes.
Security.
To security, yes. Oh, that's so funny. I forgot about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Please bring me my scriptures. Come get rid of this crazy person.
Just go give it to Daddy and he'll do it.
No, what was the name? I'm sure he was probably there when you guys were there because he was there forever and ever. This security guard, like he had, I mean, do you remember some of the security guards? Like very nice.
I know
older
one
man.
of the security guards married one of the sisters.
Really?
Sure, when
I
they
hope
got
it
home,
wasn't.
yeah.
I hope it's not one of the older ones because that would be
No,
super
a
creepy.
young guy that was always over on the West Gate. They got married.
Yeah, cool. I wouldn't know. I wouldn't know, but there were some really nice people. Like there were some really nice people there.
Yeah.
Anything else, Monica?
No, I just, you know, it was just such an interesting experience, and I definitely enjoyed my time on Temple Square. I will never deny that it was a great mission and that I learned so much, and I did learn stuff from my companions.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing I do remember, I had one of the supervisors was my friend, and I wasn't getting along really well with my companion at the time, and so she would make sure she switched our lunches so I didn't have to spend time with her.
That's funny. That's really funny. It's funny how you called her your supervisor.
Yeah.
We actually did have like President Snow switched it so that we had like district leaders, zone leaders, and then, you know, the mission president assistants, and they were all women. So you can't tell me women can't lead this church.
Right. Well, that's why I never felt that. I mean, I had to see in hindsight, you know, this whole, you know, women are, you know, not equal because of Temple Square and also where I'm from. Like I always had leadership positions. I was district leader and I was assistant to the president on my mission. And I, you know, and I was like, I had leadership position in the MTC. So I always was in some sort of leadership. And so I never really felt like, oh, we don't get to speak. But it's not because a few do, then, you know, it's not everyone's experience. But so I had to see that, like I said, like I never even noticed until it was in the news that a woman had never prayed in general conference until 2014, you know, like someone had to point it out to me and I'm like, what?
Okay. So I loved the square. I think I I didn't have my last companion was a struggle. But the things I loved about the square was at one point there were 6 girls living in an apartment, because the Gordon Place houses, that was my favorite place to live. Because you had 3 floors and it was just bedlam all the time. It was so fun. But there were 6 girls and I was the only American. Like, I loved that. I loved that you could come home and there may be kimchi marinating in your underneath your sink. I loved that, you could get fresh tortillas anytime you wanted, just find the right floor. I loved that whole aspect of Temple Square. I loved that if I didn't like my companion, I didn't have to spend the day with her.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and we didn't have to be together all the time. That was cool.
I loved that. And I loved that, you could, it was sad. I read somewhere not very long ago that like they redid the visitor centers. And so like the North Sisters Lounge and the South Visitor Sisters Lounge are no longer there. I was like,
that was the hangout.
Yes. Like I remember Monica and I sitting in the North Visitor Center just laughing at I'll use her code name Lolita, and like all of these like just making fools of themselves and wetting our pants laughing.
Oh no, yes. We laughed so hard, yeah.
And and you just immediately it's crazy because when we were there, President Witt was the first formal mission president. And March 95, if I remember right, was like the first set of true Temple Square missionaries. It was still kind of mingled with volunteers and all of that.
Okay. I didn't know that.
So, yeah, it was like a big deal that we were like legit, and there's a lot of the legend is that President Hinckley said he was walking through the South Visitor Center and they used to have the baptismal font and all the dioramas with the phones and stuff in there. And the Mormon myth and legend was that he walked and said, no longer is it time for people to wander through. We're going to
you cutting off.
Oh, am I back?
Yes. I hear you.
Yeah. Okay. He said, no longer is it time to let people wander through. It is time for us to teach them. And he redid all of the South Visitor Center, and we were the chosen ones to get this ball rolling.
We were the jewels. We were the jewels of the church, right? And we got told that several times.
Yeah. And all of the things that happened, like I remember I was so begrudging to go to the square, and it didn't help that the first thing I was told when I got off the bus from the MTC is the mission president said to me, "You look just like your picture."
Okay. Was that good or bad? Or?
That's what I was like. It was like, nice to meet you. Like, what because I don't know about y'all, but they always said, oh, you got called to Temple Square. Oh, yeah. Nobody's ever, if you get called from Arizona, it's like, oh, what's wrong with you? Like what Monica said.
Oh, really? I don't know.
Yeah, you got to serve a foreign mission, Juliana, right?
Right. Well, for me, it was far away, but I remember a lot of sisters feeling down because just, like some of you, they wanted to go far away. They wanted a real mission. They didn't want to be the pretty girl walking around giving tours.
Yeah.
And I was kind of offended when people would say tour guide. I mean, it is what we were, but at the same time, it was so much more too, because quite frankly, I think that in some ways our mission was way more tiring because we were on our feet like all the time, all day long, as we weren't sitting anywhere teaching a lesson, almost no. I mean, the breaks were pretty short. They were like 30 minutes. I mean, they were long days, physically it was draining. I mean, the field, I went to the Oregon Portland mission, mostly serving in Vancouver, Washington. And I also rode bikes in the rain for 4 months with my rain gears.
Yeah.
So, and you know what, I'm glad I did all that, because never in the world would I do something like that today, like put on a rain gear, go in the rain, ride a bike all day. I mean, who does that,
Yeah.
But it teaches you hard things, and hard things make you, I don't know, better, I think, in some ways. But I had a companion, I had about 13 companions, I think, altogether, 13 or 14 throughout the whole mission. Sometimes we were, a couple doubled or something like that. And I've had one of my heart companions became a good friend, and we're still friends today, which is funny, but she was hard on the mission. Like, I won't say who it was. And then there was another one who literally didn't talk. Like, she wouldn't talk. Like, she wouldn't do companionship studies. I would ask her questions. She would just stare at me. I don't know if she was like in a deep depression. She had a little bit, she was from out of the country, from a European country. I'm just going to generalize in case she listens. I don't want to pinpoint, but that was the hardest, because I was super zealous, hyperactive me, wanting to go and do, and she was just lethargic. Like, I don't even know how to explain, like, and then you want to be compassionate, because like, oh, she's struggling, she's learning the language and things like that. But man, that was hard. It's like you're pulling a bullet, and it's like,
yeah.
So anyways, but you go through some stuff, and I always said, the cool thing is when we finish with this, we get to choose our companion, which is going to be so awesome. And then look at me. No.
Find your new companion right away when transferring to a new area.
Well, you're exactly. Yeah, you're not given, but overall, honestly, I can say that, I'd be friends with most of the people I serve with. I see you wincing, Kelly. Tell us what's going on in your head.
I'm really glad that I didn't have to spend all my time with my companion. I loved being on the square for the sanctuary that it was. I had some really rough companions, and I always, I think in general, we all think we're easygoing because we live with ourselves. But I'm really like, whenever you take the personality quizzes, I'm always marked as amiable. Like, just go with the flow, let it happen. And I was always, not always, that's too harsh, but I was generally placed with very rigid girls. And I'm not rigid, and so I was grateful for that. I served my 4 months in the Jackson, Mississippi mission.
Wow.
Which I loved the culture. I loved the South. I married a boy from Texas. Come on. I loved it, but I hated the experience.
Well, I mean, that would have been really hard, because Bible Belt hates Mormons, right?
Oh, it was, and that was, that just helped strengthen my shelf, was going to Jackson. And then my mission president was fine. His wife was awful. And where, Monica, you had the companion who would introduce you as, oh, she's from Temple Square. One time in a zone conference, they would always pick on me and pull me to like give the talk, or to practice how to give the discussion, or any of it. Was always me. And I didn't care. Getting up in front of people, not an issue, but it was the criticism that I would get afterwards that was so a personal attack.
Wow.
And it was blatantly obvious. And they had this new thing that they wanted us to do when you taught the first discussion, that as you say, well, will you pray to know if Joseph Smith is a prophet of God? And as we said, will you pray, we would get on our knees.
What?
yeah, essentially coercing.
Talk about coercion.
Yes,
My
it was
goodness.
awful.
Like, how about grab their head and shoulders and pull them down as you go down? Oh my
Exactly.
gosh.
So I am like dying that they're having us do this. And my companion, bless her heart, she knew that it would be my, you know how you swap? She knew it'd
Yeah.
be my to do it. And I wouldn't do it. I didn't do it. And
Wow.
the mission president and, you know, all the elders, we're the only sisters. All the elders are like, and me being me, very flippant and like I use humor to get out of situations. I said, well, it's hard just kneel on Temple Square.
Oh.
And the mission president's wife stands up, points at me and says, well, you're not on Temple Square, are you?
Wow.
And
Wow.
Kelly.
How Christ-like.
yeah.
Kelly.
Yes.
Now, when you were in the field,
Mhm.
do you remember the situation? I believe it was the same one of the sisters that came to Tennessee with you, and she went to go get a haircut, and they're like, "Oh, you're Mormon," and they shaved her whole head. Do you remember that?
What? Are you
No.
kidding?
I know.
No,
the
yeah,
far
she came back. She looked like Audrey Hepburn. She came out in my group. I cannot remember. I'm so terrible with names.
dark. She had dark
But,
hair. She went to Tennessee. I went to Mississippi.
Oh, okay,
my
yeah. She went to
God.
Are
Tennessee. I
you
thought you went to.
kidding?
Sorry.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
that is horrible.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she went to go get her hair cut, and they're like, "Oh, you're Mormon," and she shaved her entire head because she was Mormon.
That is
But
so
she owned
cruel.
it, and she wore it, and she was totally fine with it. So
Yeah.
Wow. That
Yeah.
is wild. That is wild.
I was just gonna say, I have to say that the women that I met on Temple Square have been the most strong, independent, amazing women. Like, you might not get along with their personality, but they're amazing, and they're like
Yeah.
rock stars, I think. So
Yeah.
I think all these women, in fact, well, in my little group that I made, my faith group, there is some amazing women, and that's what I think. Like, us, out of my MTC group, only one is still active. My whole MTC
Oh,
group.
wow.
And
Wow.
she's Polynesian, so I say, well, you know, that's a whole different church right there.
Lisa, when did you come out?
When
What
did
were
I?
your years for your mission?
What was it? 96, 97. So this.
Okay.
Yeah. And
That is crazy.
and most everybody that I talked with on Temple Square, that I was friends with on Temple Square, are also out. Most of them.
Wow.
And so
Wow.
I think that what is it called? Like, we attracted the same kind of people. and we all just kind of realized what was going on. And especially now with all the new policy changes and everything, like, people are starting to open, like, what?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah, no, it is. There is a flood. The church is bleeding. The church is bleeding. There's no doubt about that. But that's the reason why I do what I do, because a lot of people are leaving. A lot of people don't know who to talk to. A lot of people are suffering in silence. And I want, if I can, because I was helped, I was caught, you know, when I was falling, and I was broken to pieces. And I've had some kind people, including John Dellon, who helped me through.
I think that having the Facebook page, that My Faith Awakening, it's interesting to see how we're not alone. I've stayed in contact with Erin Chase. She just recently joined. Yes. We both live in Arizona. We've been in touch with one another through the years, but I remember when the whole when she had written on Facebook, when she decided to stop going to church, and why she decided to. And it's, you know, having a foundation or a support group to be able to go to when you decide these things, because for some people, like my family, the church is everything. They can't understand why I would have left or
Yeah.
why I chose. They understand why I divorced my ex-husband, but they don't understand like why I went down the path that I did. But I struggled for so many years in silence. And
Yeah.
it's so nice that you can have the support group, or that you
Absolutely.
know that you can see that you're not alone, and
Absolutely.
that there's other people there that have struggled in their faith as well.
No, it's huge. It's huge because it's so painful, and no one should have to suffer alone. Go ahead, Kelly. Sorry.
Well, it's just, I don't know if it's just because of who we are, but all I can hear is the very end of the video of the main tour. As your brother, you're not alone.
Yeah.
In the words of Michael McLean,
Oh
you're
my
not
gosh.
alone.
Yeah.
You want to
Yes.
sing the song?
Oh my gosh.
But it's
Never
true. Like,
alone.
even though you're on your own, you're not alone. Like, they
Yeah.
feel so empty
Yes.
and so it is infuriating and sad and heartbreaking and all the adjectives of emotions that you can come
Oh
up
yeah.
with.
Yeah.
And it's, if you can just kind of come up to the top of the hill, and there's still, you're going to fall and crash and burn. But like, I mean, I'm a year and a half out, and I am just so happy.
Right.
I'm okay.
Yeah.
The world did not, I mean, yeah, COVID happened, and I guess the world's an end, but whatever. Like, it's the Mormon is still strong in me because I still had flour and sugar and toilet paper. I had all of that stuff ready. It was
Hey,
fine.
the preppers do it too, and they're not all Mormons. The preppers. I'm like, we all want to be preppers now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fine. So
No,
I don't
it's-
know. I'm with you. And I like, the thing that makes my heart break is I remember reading, Monica, you saying you were going to take a sabbatical. And I remember thinking to myself, and I was just kind of starting my whole hot mess, thinking, she's not coming back. And I remember thinking, I need to reach out to her because it's okay if she doesn't come back. But I was too scared for myself to admit that to you. And so I'm sorry, because my heart broke for you, but I didn't know how to put it into words or to be supportive of you at that time. And so I want to, like, I totally felt for you and knew where you were, but I didn't know. Does that make sense anyway at all? But I want to apologize because I adore you and always have. And that was when I remember when you came to the square, what a breath of fresh air you were. And I remember the struggle with haircuts and lipstick and shoes and all of those things that we all went through. And it was just like, but Valentino is so freaking cool how she just handles it and rises above. And that's how I remember it.
Wow,
So
that's so
I
sweet.
hope that gives you some peace.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's how I remember.
That's so
I knew
sweet.
there
Thank you so
were
much.
going to be some tears.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's very sweet, and I'm so glad that we have each other, and that there's actually a whole world out there. I love Woka. I just joined. Are you, Lisa? You said you were in Woka too. I just love that group. I love the vibe, the
That's
realness.
that women of a certain age group.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Or
Yes.
I listened to the John Dehlin on that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think it's great. I think there's a lot of great people out there. I think it's great to be authentic, to be ourselves, with no fear, no shame, no guilt. That's like my thing, my motto. No fear, no shame, no guilt, because we just were breathing in that before. It's always something to fear, something to be ashamed of, something to be guilty about. Just throw that away and be the best you can be without all of that. Just to end, I wanted to ask you, how have you been during this time, during COVID? How do you handle things. And also, I'm always curious to know, and you've already shared, what's your ground now? What's your foundation? Do you believe? Do you not believe? Do you, because some people have found other church homes. Some people have become agnostic, atheists. What would you call yourself if you call yourself anything? Lesa, Monica, Kelly.
Okay. I don't really label myself anymore. And I think it's hard to think of any other religion right now, because I can just look at it and see kind of the same things that were in the Mormon religion, and it kind of just makes me cringe a little bit. So yeah, there's no religion. I think the thing that we teach our kids is to be good people and to be kind. And what did Monica say? Her church is love now. So that's pretty much what we do too. And if you find another group or another community that you love, then great. If you want to stay in the church, then great. It's just all about what's good for you. And the COVID thing's not that difficult for us. We're in the middle of nowhere anyway. Fairbanks, Alaska. What the heck?
Pretty good, huh?
Yeah, we've had a few cases, but nobody comes here, and it's pretty scary at first. Like they took the Carlson Center, which is like a big auditorium, and they turned it into like beds and stuff, and we were like, oh my gosh, this is getting scary. But Fairbanks community did a great job of social distancing, and really now we're all prepared. So Fairbanks is starting to open up.
Nice.
Yesterday, last week, my hairstylist called and said I can get you in, and I'm so glad I got my hair done. And
it's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Thank you. But it was all very clean, and it's a different world now.
Yes.
So you have to like wash your hands when you go in, and I had to wear a mask the whole time, and she's wearing a mask, and there was some of the chairs were moved around, and there wasn't a lot of people in there, right? So but you just kind of go with it, and we just want to keep everybody safe and everybody healthy, and do what we can. And I'm frustrated that the church doesn't do more. I mean, they have a ton of money.
Yeah.
And they could do more.
Keep asking for more too. Keep asking for more. Like, show me your faith and pay your tithing. It's appalling. Anyways,
I get frustrated with the fast and pray. I don't know how much I fasted and prayed when my mom died. It didn't work, and she got a million blessings, right? And some of them said she'd be healed, and she wasn't. So that was really frustrating, and it's frustrating to hear. Like, you see these great people and they say, oh, I'm fasting and praying, and you're like, that's great, but what else are you doing? Because the church also believes in faith without works is dead, right? So what else are they doing? What else are they doing? And I just like I said, we're doing great, and my kids are handling it very well. Maybe because we're all just homebodies anyway. I don't know, but
that helps. Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, my husband's a surgeon, so he's at the hospital, but they haven't had very many cases at the hospital here, and so he's just on call if something comes in. And he doesn't have to go in as much. And now they're starting to open for elective surgeries, and he goes in when they need him or when there's an emergency. And so it's been kind of nice. He's been home a lot more, and so kind of like, okay, you can't go anywhere and you can't do anything, but we're together.
Nice. Well, that's good. It's good to hear that you're doing well, and that you handling it well, and that you're actually in a pretty safe place too. That's actually good to hear. Awesome. Monica, you want to go?
Yes. So like I said, I'm in the wedding industry, and at the end of March, they announced that all weddings would be canceled from my last day of work was March 20th. And here in Arizona, we go into our slow season. So I probably won't have a wedding again until maybe September. But I'll be getting back to work sometime in June. But it's been nice that my husband and I always remind him that we won't ever be this much together until we both retire. So it's been really nice being able to be with him, and we've been able to spend time with with my children. They come over on a regular basis, which has been nice. It definitely is scary, and like I mentioned before, I always remind my kids when they're fighting or not getting along that this world is such a scary place right now, and it's so important to be kind and loving towards our family, and not show hate or anger towards one another. I definitely have struggled with depression during this time. It's the first time I can't remember not having a response, because my kids don't live with me full time, but not having a responsibility, and I'm just home all the time. But my husband has been also on furlough. He just started back half a week. So he's not back full time. So I have him with me most of the time. He's working this week, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. But and I've had my kids here, but this is the first time in my life where I don't have like something to do. And so some days what's my purpose? I don't have Relief Society. I don't have a meal to cook. I don't have kids to tend to. I'm just kind of just here. And so that's been a struggle, is just knowing like what my purpose is. So, but it's had its good and its bad, definitely.
Have you read The Happiness Hypothesis by Jonathan Haidt, or listened to it on Audible?
No, what was that again?
The Happiness Hypothesis. I really love that book. That's a book that kind of pulled me, when I was transitioning, and to kind of find, as you were speaking of purpose, how we used to talk about the purpose of life, and we have the answer to the purpose of life. And he talks more about creating your purpose to life, instead of having, focusing on this purpose of life that's universal or God wants for you. All right, Billy. COVID, tell us about how you've been coping. Good, hard, good.
Yeah, we're good. We're actually pretty good. I'm a school teacher. I teach 6th grade English, and my girls we go all to the same school district. So if I'm off, they're off. So it's been pretty nice in that regard. My husband is on disability, so he's home. But like I said, we have literally, when he was a school teacher, we all were at the same campus. So we've always been together. We like each other, so it's not a big deal. Everybody always would make fun of us and call us the modern day Little House on the Prairie, because we have one vehicle to work. And so it's nice. We've had to modify our schedules a little bit. And surprisingly, how even inadequate I appear tonight, I'm really good at Zoom. But it's been great. We haven't really complained. We live in a really rural area. Yeah, but no, we're okay. We're pretty happy. I had to make sure that I kept exercising or something, because I did go a little bit stir crazy and ate a lot of chips and drank a lot of Dr. Pepper.
Oh, we all have. We all have.
COVID-19.
Yeah.
Cool.
But no, I'm not going to even complain, because we're all healthy and it could be a lot worse. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, good. I'm so glad you guys are well.
Thank you so much for
Thank you.
allowing me to be part of it. I know I was like a little hesitant, because I'm like, I don't know what I have to offer.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, great.
So I appreciate it so much.
Thank you so much to all of you.
Great.
Bye.
Perfect.
Bye.
All right. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Love you
Bye.
later.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Faith Transition Podcast. I really hope you enjoyed it. Feel free to leave your comments and reviews on iTunes. You can also connect with me on the Faith Transition Podcast on Facebook or Instagram. If you enjoy the podcast, I'd appreciate if you shared with those around you who you think may benefit from it. As I always say, life has amazing things in store for those who do not give up. My name is Juliana Villegas. This is the Faith Transition Podcast, and I will see you next time.